Today, you're going to meet my hero. I'm going to tell you all about her. And a reminder, you're going to be bitter or you're going to be better. It's time to start the meeting.
Whatever you're going through, you will get through it because you're here. And that means you are not alone. This is the Meaningful Meeting. Now your host, Ace Cannon.
It's the same reminder every week. Look, I'm not a therapist. I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional. I'm just a guy who's going through a lot of stuff and has been through a lot of stuff in his life. And I enjoy sharing because my theory here is that if I can do something along the way that helps you overcome whatever it is you're overcoming in your life, that makes me feel better. So in some ways, the Meaningful Meeting is a very selfish podcast. It comes from a long-standing desire to help. I like to see people do good. I like to see people do better. I like stories of people overcoming things. And a lot of that stems from the person you're going to meet and hear a little bit about today on the Meaningful Meeting, my hero. It's Mother's Day. So why would I not talk about my mom? Now, I've said this before. I was extremely close with both of my parents. I was very blessed that way, despite the fact that my parents divorced, separated when I was 10, probably finally weren't divorced until I was about 12 or so. And I had a very unique relationship with both of them. In many cases, when it comes to my mom, I was almost more like, in ways as I grew up, and especially as I got older, more like a significant other of sorts, rather than her son, especially when it came to my sister. My sister will tell you that I was more of a father figure than a brother to her. And I always tried to be that way. When it comes to my mom, one thing was set forth early on, and that's the fact that my mom was a very proud woman, very hard worker, and I've always described her as tough, but not the kind of tough like, I'll fight you. That's not who she was. Always classy, always composed, not using foul language, but tough, as in, would just hang tough through whatever was coming her way. My mom was the youngest of three sisters. She graduated college from Northwestern State University in Louisiana in 3 years and became a school teacher. Never what you would call wild by any stretch of the imagination. A good, fine Christian lady who had me and then had my sister. And in the process of having my sister was twins. And Peyton and Piper. Piper survived. Peyton did not. Thus, when my Peyton was born, it was my ex-wife Shawnette's idea to name her Peyton, and she gets full credit for that, kind of in honor, which meant a great deal to my mom, a tremendous amount to my mom. So my mom really worked hard. She taught first grade for 30 some odd years, and then she segued into homebound teaching, which she really enjoyed because she got to go and help students that really needed help. They were homebound for medical reasons or personality reasons or discipline reasons, whatever the case may be. And breaking down those walls and seeing changes in those kids, specifically the ones with discipline problems, meant a lot to her. Giving them a little bit of hope, seeing some understanding come into their mind, into their eyes, meant a lot to her. And that's one of the things that I thought that made her so special. So one of the things she loved about teaching, she always said that's what she always wanted to be. She wanted to be a teacher because she loved being in the classroom. She loved teaching first grade specifically. She taught kindergarten maybe a couple years early on. I think she may have taught second grade 1 year very early on, but once she got first grade, that was her wheelhouse. Teaching kids to read and write, seeing the growth, helping them find a love of school and a love of learning, a love of reading, a love of interacting with other people. That's the thing that she was into most of all. And I find her influence in my life everywhere when it comes to those type of things. When my parents separated, my mom decided stability was the key for her. And the focal point of her life became making enough money to take care of us, but to ensure that that house in which she lived would one day be hers. And so I understood that at a very early age. money became important in my life, not from the standpoint of we've got to make a lot of money, but from the standpoint of it's important how you use it, how you spend it, how you prioritize it. Because as a school teacher, you can imagine with a dad that, didn't always have the business things going the way they should. Sometimes it was great, sometimes not so much. Couldn't always rely on the child support like you normally would. So things like, not that we were ever without. I never went without as a kid. Never went without. But we knew, hey, this is the food we have for the week. We're going to have this for dinner. And we're going to have this Tuesday night and Wednesday night and Thursday night. And everything was planned out meticulously. My mom was a planner. And she worked really hard. Remember, she would wake up in the morning before, teaching school or getting us up. She'd get up a little before 5, start the coffee. By 5 o'clock, she had clothes going. Quite often, we had red beans and rice a lot because, A, it's delicious and we loved it. My mom was great at it. And number 2, things like red beans and rice and roast were things she could put into a crock pot and get them all mixed up early in the morning, and they could sit all day so they'd be ready when we came in, try to cutting down on the time that we had to eat later. Because my sister and I were always very involved in things. And who was there? My mom. Always there. Teach school all day and be there at the end of practice to pick me up. A lot of times you'd catch a ride to practice with somebody else, or somebody's dad was the coach, and all the kids in the neighborhood would pile into the car and ride with them. Never missed a game. Not until I got older, and it was one of her and 2 kids involved in stuff at the same time. Never missed anything. Anything important, never missed. Never took sick days because she saved those sick days in case one of us got sick and she really needed them. So she'd go to school feeling really lousy a lot of times. But never took that sick day because it was important to her. And I think a lot about my mom, especially now, because in case you don't know, this is my first Mother's Day without my mom. She died in September. And she talked a lot about she just wanted to be 80. She wanted to make it to 80. And she did by just a few days. She died just a few days after her 80th birthday. Less than 2 weeks, actually, after making her 80th birthday. My mom battled Alzheimer's and fought a valiant fight with a disease that you'll never beat, and it's brutal. And watching someone as proud and as smart as my mom fight that, slowly losing her memory, was frustrating and heartbreaking. But she never lost her sense of humor until the very end when she really was non-communicative. I think of my mom and I think of all the things that made her so special. And I think of things like her tenacity and how tough she was. Because once my parents split up and my dad left, my mom decided I need to make a little more money. And the way to do that was, she did some tutoring and stuff, but really it was during the summers. She worked to get her master's degree because you made a little bit more money when you got your master's degree when you were a teacher in Louisiana. I guess you still do everywhere. And I know it was hard to teach all day, take classes in the evening, and have 2 kids at home by yourself. And that's kind of where I mentioned I took that role did a lot of raising of my sister, who was 5 years younger than me. When you're 12 and 7, 13 and 8, somebody's got to be there for the other. And my mom took a class right toward the end of her master's, getting her master's, and she had to write a thesis. And we spent a lot of time, because the world was a very different place then, having to travel to Northwestern State University, which is about a little over an hour from our house, to go to the library. Very exciting when you're 12, 13, going to the library at a college on your Saturday afternoon. And there was even a class that she took that she had to go to Northwestern twice a week. And she paid somebody to pick us up and take us to church on Wednesdays, because every Wednesday we went to church and then and come home. And then I think it was maybe on Monday nights, 2 nights a week she had to go. My sister and I would go with her. And while she was in class, we would sit outside and do our homework and, eat our Burger King that we'd grabbed on the way up there, and then drive home. But I think about how hard she worked, how we never wanted for anything. And she was so tenacious that not only did she get her master's, but she had a 4.0 in graduate school. And not only did she get her master's and have a 4.0 in graduate school, she got a perfect score on her thesis because that was important to her. And as my mom got older, we often talked about the day that she went to get her master's. You had to be there early, and her car broke down on the way up. And her friend, my friend Brett's mom, Miss Sandy, still call her that to this day. Miss Sandy was driving up behind us, and so the car broke down. So Miss Sandy went on and took care of everything, got my mom's cap and gown, told them what had happened and everything. And we finally made it up there for this hot summer day and all these trials and tribulations and having to spend money we hadn't planned on spending to get my mom's car fixed on the way up there, that kind of thing. And here we are. And my mom, this big auditorium, my mom walks across the stage. And I'll never forget, we were just sitting there. And my sister and I were so proud because there was a part of us that felt like this was us too. That was us, we're so proud of her. And it wasn't the first time I was ever proud of my mom, but it's the first time I really remember, I was only like 12, maybe 13. I think it was the summer after I turned 13. She's like, man, wow, I get how hard she had to work to do this. And my mom would always talk about the fact that as they called her name, handed her diploma, and she said, never forget, she could still hear two little voices in the crowd. Yay, Mom. Because we just wanted her to know somebody was there. Somebody saw this moment for her and experienced it with her. We were super proud of her. And as I grew older, my mom and I even became, closer. But, there are things that go on in life that you look back on and go, man, that's interesting. And one of my memories of my mom, and it speaks a lot to who she is and her desire to do for others. There was a time when I was in high school, we were doing, ordering athletic, like your hoodies and sweatpants and all for athletes. And we just didn't have the extra money at that time to do that. And so we didn't do it. And that bothered her for years and years and years and years and years. And I always hated that it bothered her so much. It was no big deal. It was okay. Did I want them? Yes, I wanted them badly. But it wasn't something we had the extra money for. And it just always bothered her that she couldn't do that for me. Talked about it for years. And that always broke my heart a little bit because I wish she had understood that she'd done so much more for me. So much more for me. Then as I grew older, there was a time when I was leaving my home. I graduated college. She was there for every bit of that. And then when I graduated college, I moved back to my hometown and to work because I had received this first job offer. And a couple of years later, about 3 years later, it was time to go. TJ and I were leaving for a job in a much bigger city. And standing outside my apartment with my all of my stuff packed up, leaving the next morning. She'd helped me pack up that night. I was going out with friends to have a celebratory dinner and a few drinks. And my mom, she broke down in tears. Cried uncontrollably for a little while. And she said, "You're never coming back." And I knew she was right. And it was hard for her because, you move forward in life, and I wasn't coming back. I was gone, just like my plan had always been. And that was hard for her. But she was very proud. And very proud of our success, and very proud of who we were and how we helped people. Because those were things that she taught me. Those were things that were important to her, being there to help others when you had the opportunity. I am the way I am. And as I've said many times, all of the good things I am in my life come from being around my mom. And she knew when it was, she knew when you had difficult things going on in life. And she sent me something one time that I'll never forget. I was in college and I was having a hard time deciding on a few things and what to do. And I was out of college. And she sent me a card with an eraser in it. And when I read the card was a little story about a kid who drew all these bad things that he saw, and then learned that he could take the eraser and just erase all the armies that he saw out there in the world that he thought he was going to have to fight one day. And she included this little eraser that I kept in a briefcase for years. I've now got it all put away. A little handwritten note in the back. It just said, here's an eraser for all the armies that you'll have to fight. It was the perfect words at the perfect time, which was who my mom is and who my mom was. And I always tried to make sure that I let her know how much I appreciated how hard she worked, the example she set, and who she was as a person, and the things that she taught me. And the reason I tell you this is not just because it's Mother's Day. It's because these are things that I made the effort to tell her when she was alive. So I'm not saying anything to you now that I haven't said to her. And that's the point. Don't let those opportunities go by. Probably 10 years ago at Christmas, I had an idea, and I knew my mom was close. And so I went home for Christmas and went through her files and found the house note. And she had 3 house payments left. And they weren't very much because she'd had that house since 1973. So it's like 2013, 2012, something like that. She had 3 left. So for Christmas, we gave her her house. And in the process of doing that, I wrote her a card, and just said about how little this could be, but how important it was to be able to do this for her, because I know the struggle and the importance to her of maintaining this particular house with everything that she'd been through after my parents divorced. We were able to give that to her for Christmas. And it meant the world to her. But as much as the payment, she pointed out later, it was the words. Knowing that someone had seen and appreciated all that she had done and all that she'd been through. When I gave her eulogy, I pointed out that as I've grown older and had kids of my own, I came to be even more impressed with who she was, because she did it all on her own. She worked. She cooked dinner every night. She made sure we got all of our school activities. She made sure she was there for games and events. She was a superwoman. And she was my hero. She did things for us that you didn't even understand how special they were at the time. But to give you an example, my sister turned 15. I was 20 years old, but I had to work. I was home from college. And for my sister's 15th birthday, I wanted to take her to see Bon Jovi in Lafayette, Louisiana. It's a little over 2 hours away. And this was pre-going on the internet. They didn't have that in what would have been, what? This was, if I was 20, 1990. And my mom went and waited outside the radio station that was the Ticketmaster outlet. We turned on the news that night after she'd waited in line very early that morning to get in line to get tickets. And the TV station, KALB TV, showed the line of people outside the radio station that morning getting tickets for Bon Jovi's show in Lafayette. And there within, several hundred, maybe 500 teenagers was my mom. We laughed about it. And she loved being able to help. She was a great sounding board, great for advice. She was a great friend. And when I first met my wife, we were sitting outside of this townhouse that I lived in at the time. And everybody was there, and Amanda got up and walked inside, and my mom turned to me and she said, and I quote, "I like her. She's a keeper." And I said, "I think so too." And my mom turned to me, she put her hand on my knee and she goes, "She's good for you." And in that moment, I knew what she meant. There are a lot of things I'd like to tell you about my mom. She was sweet, smart, tough, nice, kind. Everybody liked her. Everybody loved her. Nobody had a bad thing to say about her. But all of those things that I tell you don't do justice to what she means to me. So closed my mom's eulogy in a rather unusual way. My mom retired from teaching after 39 years full time. And I wrote her a letter. And I'd forgotten about the letter until my sister found it when my mom died. And I pointed out in her eulogy, while it was written for her retirement, it could actually be her life story. And I wrote to my mom. I said, most impressive, though, is the sight that she never lost sight of her true calling in life, being a mother and a teacher. She never let us down. She never let her students down. Did we always get along? Nope. Did she always make the right decision? Not in my opinion, but neither have I for that matter. Here's what I know. I know that she always worked long and hard to make students smarter, make them better citizens, and most importantly, teach them how to learn. She also did the same for her children. There's a saying about looking back on your life and asking yourself if the world is a better place because you were in it. And for her, that question doesn't even need an answer. So here's to my hero. Sleep late tomorrow, Mama. You've earned it. God bless you. I love you. Your son. I've probably talked too long about my mom, but it's kind of, when you get going, it's hard to stop. But I hope you'll let whoever your hero is, whether it's your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your friend, your family, whoever that might be, A, I hope you have one. B, I hope you let them know about it. Because it's important. Normally, this is where I would tell you there's the final 5 minutes coming up. And I have something for the final 5 minutes that just, after talking about my mom like this, maybe we'll get to it next week. Because I don't want anything to take the spotlight off my mom today. It's my first Mother's Day without my hero. Next week.
Whatever you're going through, you're not alone. You are a part of the Meaningful Meeting, presented by the Radio Network. Copyright ATJ Inc. 2022.